let's say Sonny Dykes does get TCU in year one there in Fort Worth. That would be pretty incredible. Obviously, he would be properly lauded with all kinds of National Coach of the Year awards. He probably still will be, no matter how it plays out these last 3 games. But if that happens, I'm kind of wondering how that would affect Gary Patterson's legacy there in Fort Worth. Obviously, he's got a statue outside of the stadium. We know what he did there for 2 decades. Won a lot of games, won a lot of bowl games, had him, had him right there every year. So what do y'all think as far as, would that like tarnish Patterson's legacy if Sonny were able to take TCU to a place that Patterson never did in year one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it tarnishes it. I feel like he would still be sort of seen as the architect, right? Like, he got them to a Power 5 conference. He won a Rose Bowl, which was, I mean, at this point, the biggest win in school history. Won another New Year's Six game against Ole Miss in the Peach Bowl in 2014. It is sort of a fascinating thing to watch, though. I mean, this is like, it's his team. Like, they brought in a few transfers that have made impacts, but Max has been a quarterback here for now 4 seasons. I mean, Quentin Johnson and Kendre Miller and a lot of other players on that offense have been here for years. So Sonny has definitely unlocked something. The tricky thing for Sonny now is if he does get there in year one, I mean, sort of, where do you go after that? Like, that's a hard act to follow. And it's not something that you can do year in and year out. But I think it probably just depends on, part of the Gary's appeal too was it's so rare now to have somebody stay in one place for 20 plus years. Like, you just don't see that, especially at a place like TCU. I think the job's changed now, but when he started there, it was kind of a stepping stone to the next job. So I feel like there's still a lot that has to be played out. I don't think it tarnishes his legacy, but it is really fascinating that they're kind of on the verge of this when, I mean, to be honest, like, this was a mediocre program the last couple of years. They were 5-7 or 6-4, kind of hovering around that range. And they've doubled their win total from last year. So it's really impressive stuff from Sonny.
John?
Yeah, I don't think it would tarnish it, like Stephen said, but I do think it shows that he was still bringing in talent. He just couldn't get them to rise to the occasion, I guess, or play to their talent, because they've obviously have talent. I mean, to do what they're doing this year, just seems like they just needed a new coach and a new system, and just to kind of get them revived again, to get them revived in the rivalry.
I like it. Yeah, I almost compare this a little bit to when Mac Brown left Texas. And stay with me on this. So I think at the end of Mac Brown's tenure, there were just a lot of UT fans who were disgruntled about, they weren't quite living up to expectations. And yeah, they were still getting some good recruits in, but they weren't winning at the level that they wanted to win at. And, he gets pushed out. And we've seen what a mess Texas has been ever since. Now, in hindsight, there's a lot of, man, Mac Brown wouldn't be bad, that kind of thing. But this is obviously a little different than that. I feel like where Texas didn't find the right guy, TCU did. And obviously they just had to go right across town, right across the Metroplex to get the guy. But, I think it could have worked out like that if they'd have hired the wrong guy.
Yeah.
But,
Brice and John, did you guys see that story from Kirk Bowles late last week that allegedly Chris Del Conte had kind of a handshake deal with Sonny at Texas, and then the boosters were like, no, try again, and then that's how they ended up with Sark?
Yeah, I did see that. That was interesting.
That is interesting. Wow.
It was. It was
Yeah.
it was curious to me because I was honestly a little underwhelmed when he got the job. I thought he was a good coach, but I just felt like it was kind of a cop out because he was right there in the Metroplex. He had beaten TCU a few times, but I didn't realize, like, if that's true, kind of the respect that he had across
Mm.
the industry, that, you know, he would be up for the Texas job, because that's not a job I would have thought that he would have been able to jump to from SMU. But anyway, it was just kind of a fascinating
Yeah.
fact.
Yeah,
that's
that
for
that
sure.
does speak to the level of respect he got. I'm with you. I was a little underwhelmed, honestly. Maybe even compared to some other hires like Joey McGuire at Tech, who I feel like is the perfect fit in Lubbock. It's certainly looking like a good fit for Sonny Dykes at TCU right now.
Mhm.
Stephen, I think you also made a good point about, you know, if he does go to the CFP in year one, you know, where do you go from here kind of thing. I think, you know, Dave Aranda's experiencing a little of that this year. Obviously, year two for him was the big year. You know, year one, I think he just chalk that up to whatever. It was COVID and you know, it was a tough transition. But year two, Aranda takes Baylor to a Big 12 championship game, and now I feel like they're fighting a little of that expectations. I think you know, you saw that they were the preseason number one team in the Big 12 for the first time ever, and there's, you know, a fair amount of hand wringing and gnashing of teeth from the Baylor fans, just because, you know, they might go 8-4, 7-5 rather than, you know, 12-1 or whatever. But you know, expectations kind of, they're good and they're bad. I mean, obviously you want to be one of the best teams in the country, but it does put that pressure on you to try to replicate that, you know, year after year. So can Sonny Dykes do that? We'll see. I mean, I like what he's doing there, that's for sure. I will also put in a little plug here. So this is a sign that it's a new era at TCU. John knows where I'm going.
I know where you're going.
So back in the day when Gary Patterson was the head coach, he was among the few in the Big 12. I would lump him in with Bill Snyder at K-State and probably when Mike Leach was at Texas Tech, who was very, I don't know what the word, protective or whatever of his players and not putting them out there in the media. He was very much a control freak in that regard. And this is who you could talk to. I think he would often trot the same guy out each week, you know.
Like a third team center.
Right. Which, you know, who cares? Who wants to talk to that guy? But so anyway, I'm doing a story this week on Trevius Hodges Tomlinson, the stud cornerback for TCU, Midway product, playing great again. He's been all Big 12 the last two seasons before this one. I assume he will be again. He's got 3 interceptions, playing great. I assume we'll also see Trevius in the NFL. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that, talking to him today.
Good.
Yeah, that's great. And no, you're right. Gary's famous line was, if I tell you, then I'm telling X, right? So if I tell you who's starting at quarterback this week, then I'm also telling Baylor or Texas or whoever it is. So it's been almost like whiplash seeing. Like, I remember Sonny a couple of weeks ago did an interview with like Barstool Sports, which is fine. I mean, like, he's just kind of doing whatever they ask him to do, but it's just strange to see him going on like ESPN and all these shows. I'm like, oh man, this is such a different world than we were living in for the past decade or so.